What's up? Of course, it's your host, Hawk, and welcome to another episode of the Hawks Hoops podcast. I'm in a good mood today, and that's because I'm excited to announce that we are officially, finally, after almost a month, 3 episodes, we missed a week, so basically a month, we're on Apple Podcasts. So you now can find the Hawks Hoops podcast on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, Hawks World. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts. And if you listen somewhere else that I didn't mention, go to us on Anchor, and then you'll probably find a link to a couple of other places there as well. But I'm excited. It's been we had a good little break. You know, All-Star break happened, and now basketball is back underway fully. And so let's just go ahead and hop right into it. And I want to talk about the Warriors first. Because I'll be honest with you, I didn't think much of the Warriors going into this season, especially, you know, Klay Thompson was injured. Kelly Oubre was playing like doo-doo at the beginning of the season. Wiggins wasn't playing that great at the beginning of the season. Draymond Green was out. And it literally looked like at the beginning of the season, they was like, yo, we might as well go ahead and everybody on NBA Twitter was saying, yo, just sit Steph. Don't play him, sit him. There's no need to play Steph Curry this season. But the Warriors have almost done a 180 from their first half of the season. I'll say the first 20 games to the second 20 games. They've played about 39, 40 games. So if you look at that like that, break it down like that, they've almost had a full 180. And they look good. And I think a lot of it comes down to two things. One, Steph Curry is Steph Curry. He looks amazing. I'm not even gonna hold you. He's playing amazing. He looks amazing. He looks like Steph Curry. And I think the other part of it is their pieces, their supporting cast has found themselves. For example, Kelly Oubre Jr., first 20 games of the season, we knew he was horrible. 12 points, 37% field goal percentage, 22% three-point percentage. And this is when we seen all the memes of saying Kelly Oubre can't hit the broadside of a barn. He couldn't hit water if he was on an ocean. Like, he was shooting horribly. Now he's averaging in his second 19 games of the season, he's up to 19 points, 49% field goal percentage, and 40% from three. He's being the Kelly Oubre that I think a lot of people expected him to be there. I don't know if it was a new city or the expectations or just, I don't really know what it was. It could have been something personal, whatever. But he was definitely in a shooting slump, and now he's out of it, and then he looks better on the floor. Andrew Wiggins actually looks good on the floor. If you go back and watch a lot of my videos, I don't want to say I'm an Andrew Wiggins stan, because I'm definitely not. But I'm definitely a fan of his, and I'm definitely someone who is always on the brink of, just give him some more time. He's still young. Give him some more time. He's still young. Because I think Andrew Wiggins definitely has the ability to be a good player in the league. And he's showing that now. He looks good. James Wiseman is looking good as well for them. Their rookie that they got, their rookie big man they got, he looks good on the floor when he gets his minutes. And I think him having Draymond Green as a mentor is amazing. As much slack and as much hate Draymond Green gets, and a lot of it is granted. Some of it is granted. I won't say a lot. I'll take that back. He's always yelling at the refs, this, that, the third. Some people call him a dirty player. But one thing about Draymond Green, and you can't take it away from him, he's always working hard. He is someone who, on paper, if you looked at him, you wouldn't think he'd be great in the league. But he's been a defensive player of the year. He's a champion. He knows how to win. And he's a good leader for James Wiseman to learn from, both defensively and offensively. Granted, we know Draymond Green's not going to be someone who is scoring a whole lot like I think James Wiseman could in the future. But Draymond knows how to see the floor. He's a great playmaker. He can instill some of that into James Wiseman. And we all know Draymond's a great defender. He can see the floor well. He knows how to move his body in the right position to play well. Even though he isn't the biggest person on the floor, he plays center all the time. So I think that's great for James Wiseman. I honestly cannot wait to see Klay Thompson come back and join this team. I think going into this season, I think they thought that with Klay being there, they may have these additions and they thought they could do something. And then when Klay was out, I think a lot of people looked into it. Well, Wiggins and Oubre are probably only there for a little bit. They're going to get moved. And the way they've been playing now, they look like great trade pieces, both of them. But I can see Wiggins staying there long term. He's still got 2 seasons left on his contract. He fits well with the system. You can play him at the 3, put Klay at the 2, Steph at the 1, obviously. That could be a solid lineup. Oubre is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. The trade deadline is coming up. We're going to talk about some trades later. So I guess there's a possibility that he could get traded. But if I'm a team, I don't know if I'd be willing to trade for Kelly Oubre. I'll be completely honest with you. I wouldn't give up much for him. He has been playing a whole lot better in the second half of the season so far. But I don't know if I necessarily trade for him. It might look like the Warriors just end up potentially losing him in offseason. He may re-sign, but I don't know if it's enough room on the floor for Wiggins, Oubre, and Clay. But I can see Wiggins and Clay playing together. I would love to see Oubre there too. I think that would add a lot of depth to that team. They would start to look like some shades of that 2016 Warriors team where it was really like that big three of Steph, Clay, and Draymond, but they had crazy amount of depth. And I think if you somehow keep Oubre and Wiggins, Wiseman's playing well, that's a lot of depth for that team that could really do something. So keep your eye on the Warriors. Watch a couple Warriors games if you haven't yet this season. Catch them against the middle of the pack team though. Don't watch the Warriors against like the Lakers or the Clippers. They might get smacked. But catch them against a Spurs team or you can catch the Warriors against like, I'm trying to think of an Eastern Conference team. I wanted to say to my Sixers, but I don't really want to disrespect us like that. But I mean, low key, we gonna move on. I don't want to disrespect my Sixers like that. But catch the Warriors, watch their games. It's good basketball to watch. Moving on. Speaking of a team that you need to watch, if you aren't watching them yet, I don't know how because they're on a lot. Watch Pelicans basketball. You need to watch Pelicans basketball. And yes, a lot of it is because of Zion Williamson. And we're going to talk about him first, but there's another player on the Pelicans I want to talk about before we move on from them. So let's talk about Zion first. Zion is absolutely amazing. He's currently averaging 25 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and 61% from the field, 31% from 3, which isn't great. A lot of teams will probably still take that risk of leaving them wide open and see what happens when you're only shooting 31%. But the way Pelicans have been using Zion these last couple of games is they're starting to realize what they have. And what I mean by that is they're letting him bring the ball up a little bit more, run some of the offense on possessions, let him be the ball handler, pick and roll. And a lot of people forget Zion used to play point guard before he became an absolute phenom in athleticism. He played a lot of point guard. So he has a little bit of a handle. He can see the floor very, very, very well. The last game, I can't remember who they played against, unfortunately, but the last couple of games I remember seeing with them, there were tons of sequences where Zion was finding open shooters, dumping the ball off to Steven Adams. He's an underrated playmaker, in my opinion. But he finishes very well around the rim. He can finish with either hand, but if he goes left, get out the way because you're not stopping him. I like Zion Williamson. I think he's going to obviously be a staple in this league for a long time as long as he stays healthy. And he's been, so far, I think a lot of people had a lot of concerns about his health in this season considering the injury he had in his rookie season. But he's been playing great. But what I really wanted to talk about, shout out to Zion, but that's not why we brought up the Pelicans. I want to talk about the Ball brother who isn't getting the shine he deserves. Alonzo Ball is coming into his own. He's finally found his three-point shot. He is controlling the pace. He's looking like a dominant point guard in this league who will be here for a long time and will probably be a top 10 point guard if he might already be a top 10 point guard. Hey, that might be some blasphemy, but he's that type of trajectory of a player so far. Currently averaging 14 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 42% from the field and 38% from 3. Now, you might be saying, Hawk, what in the world are you talking about? Those numbers don't really jump out at you. No, they don't. But you got to watch the games. He is controlling the tempo of a game. He's controlling the tempo of his team's offense. He's an elite defender at the guard position. Can, in my opinion, guard 1 through 3. If you were a bigger 3, he might not be able to guard you, but he definitely can guard the 1 and the 2 easily. Like one of the best defenders in the league because he has the athleticism, he has the length for it, and he has the mind for it. But the thing I think that's unlocked his game so much and proves, or should I say, is an example of him becoming more comfortable, becoming more confident in the NBA, is the return of his 3-point shot. One thing that we scouts loved and executives loved about Zion when he was in college is he was a great 3-point shooter. And then he came to the league, tried to switch up his shot, and it didn't look the same. Everyone made fun of his shot. He didn't shoot great percentages. But he's currently made 108 threes this season. And he's sits at number 13 on the leaderboard of made threes for the season. And he's ahead of people like James Harden, Trae Young, and Paul George. Granted, they're not, it's not a crazy gap. But I say those names to put in perspective of how great he's shooting this season. He's shooting, like I said, 38% from three. And he's made 108 threes. He's shooting at a high clip, shooting a lot of threes per game. He's having an excellent season. Not Kelly Oubre, but Brandon Ingram's also looking great for that team. He's looking comfortable. The Pelicans are just a nice, young, fun team. They are currently, I should have wrote this down. So they're currently 11th seed, 17 and 22. I didn't put this in this segment, but one of the teams who I'm disappointed in this season, as much as they're fun to watch, I'm kind of disappointed in them. And it might sound like I'm contradicting myself, but hear me out. They're exciting to watch because there's moments when, Zion Williamson, he's going to be excited to watch. I'm excited to see Lonzo Ball playing well. But as a unit, I honestly expect a little bit more from them. I expected them to be a playoff type team, or at least a play-in team. I mean, like I said, they're 11th seed right now. They're 17 and 22. The Grizzlies are the 10th seed, locking up that other play-in spot at 17 and 18. So it's not like they're way out. And it is also the West, so you have to keep that in mind. It's not going to come easy playing out in the West. But I think I expect a little bit more from them. I expected them to have a couple more wins. Hopefully they can string some wins together moving further into the second half of the season. Let's talk about, before we get into some of the trades, because the trade deadline is right around the corner, believe it or not. Let's talk about these Blazing Suns. These Suns, the Phoenix Suns, are on fire. They are currently second in the West, sitting 25 and 12. And I will be completely honest with you, I did not see this coming. I knew they were going to be better. I expected them to be a playoff team or at worst a play-in team, meaning they were going to be the 9 or 10 seed. But I saw the Phoenix Suns somewhere between like 6 to 9, anywhere around there, and I would have been like, okay, I see you, Phoenix. The Phoenix Suns, like I said, are currently second in the West, 25 and 12, and this is no disrespect to anybody else in that team, but you gotta say it's the Chris Paul effect. Chris Paul, give him his flowers while he's still here. Give him his roses while he can smell them. In my opinion, is the best point guard of all time. He is my favorite point guard of all time. Any list, Chris Paul, greatest point guard all time in my book. I don't want to hear it. Only thing that might stop him from a lot of other people's lists for being number one is because he doesn't have a ring. But he has everything else. Chris Paul has a winning mentality, and he brings that to every team he's been on. Every team that he's been on gets better when he's there and usually gets worse when he leaves. He's currently averaging 16 points, 9 assists, 47% from the field, 39% from three, which are typical Chris Paul numbers. But what's jumping out is his control, very similar to Lonzo. I said Lonzo should give me shades of Chris Paul, but Chris Paul does it at an even better level of controlling the offense, getting his teammates involved, and really pushing the pace, slowing it down. And he is a winner. He has the ability to, he can defer to Devin Booker when it comes to the clutch time and crunch time. But in the fourth quarter, I'm okay with Chris Paul having the ball in his hands because I know he's a winner. I know he can make tough shots. Also, speaking to someone who can make tough shots, who shares the backcourt with him, Devin Booker is still Devin Booker. And if you look at his numbers, he's not having that much better of a season. It was actually funny, a couple of weeks ago, a reporter asked him, Devin, what do you think is attributing to you having so much of a better season this season than you did last year? And he says, am I having that much better of a season? Did you watch me that year? I don't think I'm having like that greater of a season than last season, which makes sense because his numbers aren't really that much different. He's really doing what he's been doing. But the fact that he's doing what he's been doing to me is a testament of, I'll be honest, I don't think I ever thought this, but something that was always in the back of my head and something that applies to a lot of players that have been in his situation the last couple of seasons. There was a looming question, in my opinion, over Devin Booker's career of, Is he actually an elite player, or is he just someone who can put up great numbers on a trash team? Because let's be honest, the last couple of seasons the Suns have been trash, and he's been putting up pretty much the same numbers he's putting up now, which are elite numbers. But the team is trash, so you got to ask that question. But Devin Booker's proving, no, I'm not a fluke. Like, when teams are trying to beat us because we're the second seed and teams are scheming for us and showing up with their A game because they know we will show up with our A game, I'm still dropping these points. We're still getting wins. So shout out to Devin Booker for proving that to, I think, a lot of people. And I don't think I mentioned this in the last episode. Congratulations to him on his All-Star selection, but he was injured, I believe, or he didn't play. I know that much. I can't remember if his injury was actually serious or it was just something minor and he just decided to sit out. I want to continue to talk about the Phoenix Suns, talk about two more players on that team. One who I'm a little disappointed with, and one I'm pleasantly surprised. So let's talk about the disappointment first and end it on a happy note. DeAndre Ayton. When I say I'm disappointed, it's not because he's playing bad. Don't get me wrong there. I just expected him to make a bigger leap with a player like Chris Paul on his team. When the news broke last in the offseason that Chris Paul was joining the Suns, I think everybody expected DeAndre Ayton to basically turn into DeAndre Jordan 2.0, when he was on the Clippers. And if we remember correctly, DeAndre Jordan was an all-star. DeAndre Jordan was an all-star. I believe he made an All-NBA one of those seasons. Like, he was an elite player, literally based off his athleticism and the fact that Blake Griffin and Chris Paul set him up amazingly for easy lobs, easy dunks, and he defended very well. In my opinion, DeAndre Ayton has a very similar makeup. I think I foresaw his numbers going up actually a lot, but they haven't. But he's still playing solid. He's not playing bad. I'm not trying to say that. And I'll admit I'm not watching as many Phoenix Suns games as I should to maybe get a better reference for his play. So I'm going to keep an eye on Phoenix for maybe the next couple of weeks, and I'll give you an update about DeAndre Jordan if my opinion on him has changed. DeAndre Ayton, if my opinion on him has changed or not. And finally, on the Phoenix Suns, I want to talk about my boy Dario Saric. Shout out to my former Sixer, Dario Saric. He's just having a great season. I'm just happy for him. He's not doing nothing crazy. He's continuing to spread the floor well. I believe he's averaging about 11 points, a couple rebounds, but he just looks well out there. And I think the fact that he's playing with Chris Paul and Devin Booker, it's really helping him out a lot. They're not expecting much from him defensively. So he's coming off the bench, running that second unit at the center position sometimes, which they've doing a little bit more these last couple of games. And I think although Dario Saric isn't someone who you would think of as a center, he doesn't really have the body for it, the athleticism for it, things like that. But I think his shooting ability and his scoring ability offensively, I'll say scoring ability in air quotes, I think he's a good fit for the Suns at center. So before we get up out of here, I wanted to talk about this trade deadline that's looming over a bunch of teams' heads. Trade deadline, for those of you who don't know, is March the 25th. And it's interesting. It's an interesting year this year because I feel like this is, and I may be wrong here, and I may just have, what's that called? Revisionist history going on in my brain. But I feel like this is one of the first years in a while that we've had so many teams and players publicly say, they've agreed to part ways right before the trade deadline. So it recently came out that PJ Tucker and the Houston Rockets have decided to, mutually part ways, and they're going to try to find a trade destination for him. He's an unrestricted free agent after this season, and he makes $7 million this year. So it's an easy contract to move. And honestly, I think he's going to be moved fairly quickly. I don't think this is going to be something that's going to be too hard to move him. I think it's really going to come down to the Rockets are going to get what they want, because although he's having a subpar season right now, I think a lot of that has to do with the turnover that's been happening on the Rockets this season. Starting the year with James Harden not playing, then they get Victor Oladipo and John Wall sharing the floor with DeMarcus Cousins. Then DeMarcus Cousins leaves. So there's just been a lot of turmoil going on over there in the Rockets. But if PJ Tucker's PJ Tucker, we all know you're getting an elite sniper from the corner, someone who can play the small ball five, pass the ball a little bit, but is really known to be really good defensively and help spread that floor. to create driving lanes for your ball handlers. Some interest are obviously the Lakers. The Nets were listed as interest according to Woj. I don't know if they're still going to necessarily be interested considering they just picked up Blake Griffin. But the Bucks and Heat are also on that list. And he'd be great additions for the Lakers, the Bucks, and the Heat. All of them have, ball handlers who like to drive and create and would be great to hit a wide open PJ Tucker in a corner. I have high hopes for PJ Tucker going to a nice contending team. And I think it's going to be good for the Rockets because he's a good player who you won't get much players back for him, but I think you can squeeze the draft pick out of somebody. Maybe just second round or maybe some young player, something like that. But PJ Tucker is a great player. PJ Tucker is a good player, great shooter, who can definitely help a contending team. Continuing on with these Houston Rockets, Victor Oladipo, he is an unrestricted free agent after this season. The team hasn't officially announced that they've agreed to mutually part ways. But like I said, he's an unrestricted free agent after the season. He makes $21 million, and I don't foresee them re-signing him. I think the Rockets are going to head into rebuilding mode very, very soon. It's just looking like it's turning out that way. They let go of Harden left. They're saying they let go of PJ Tucker. Boogie Cousins is gone. So I think they're going to try to go young really fast. Grow Christian Wood and see what he can do and try to build around him. And I don't think they think Victor Oladipo is a part of that. So why not try to get something for him? He's going to be a little bit harder to move, though. Currently only averaging 20 points, but very, very inefficient season, averaging 39% from the field, 32% from three. A lot of that has to do with he's been battling an injury this year. So a team that did trade for him would have to, one, trust that he'd be healthy for the rest of the season. If you're going to trade for him and if you are a contender or at least someone who's trying to contend to make the playoffs, you're going to want to make sure that whoever you get back in a trade is going to be able to help you get to that playoffs. And two, $21 million, it's not a lot in terms of NBA contracts. There's definitely bigger contracts out there in the world, but it's not a small contract by any means. So you're going to want to really think about it before you pull the trigger on a Victor Oladipo trade of, will he re-sign with you guys? You're going to want some sort of insurance that he'll re-sign in the offseason. So I'd be surprised if he gets moved before the trade deadline. But I only brought him up because he's coming up in a lot of rumors. So clearly somebody out there in the world thinks he's going to get moved. I just don't know if I see it. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Rockets just end up letting him walk, which sucks because usually teams try to get something back for a player, but he might just be a player who walks. The San Antonio Spurs and LaMarcus Aldridge have announced that they've mutually agreed to part ways in another one of those situations. So LaMarcus Aldridge is an unrestricted free agent after this season. He's making $24 million a year. I would say in his case, he's difficult to move, similar to Victor Oladipo, but a little easier, not impossible at all, by any means. He's got interest from the Celtics, the Heat, and the Trailblazers, all teams that kind of need a big man. I would say the Celtics and the Trailblazers more so need a big man for defensive purposes, but hey, if we can get a big man who can score, I'm not mad at that. Aldridge is currently averaging 13 points, 46% from the field, 36% from three, which is on the higher side for him. He's not, known throughout his career as a three-point shooter, but he's definitely expanded his range in his last couple of seasons. And he's a great third or fourth option for a team. Like those teams I just mentioned, the Celtics, the Heat, and the Trailblazers, he'd be great for any of those teams offensively, if you ask me. Defensively, I think he hurts all of them. He's not a great defender. But, I mean, hey, maybe they're just trying to score more buckets. I think he'd be great on the Trailblazers. Personally, I'd love to see him go back to Portland, maybe potentially retire there if he decides to resign. But at the same time, Portland isn't necessarily great defensively, and they're currently out of the playoffs. No, I'm sorry. They're currently in the playoffs at the 6th seed. Damian Lillard's having an amazing season, and I'm sure he would love to help. CJ McCollum might be back in the next couple week or two, and having CJ, LaMarcus, and Dame would be great. Not sure what they exactly would have to give up to get him. But I think he'd be a good fit over there in Portland. And the last guy on my list that I want to talk about today, moving, would be Aaron Gordon. Now, I know last week we talked about Nikola Vucevic, and I stated last week if I'm the Magic, I'm in my head thinking I'm running it back. I'm not giving up Nikola Vucevic. I'm not looking to move Markelle. I think I got a good young team if I'm the Orlando Magic, and I think I can make the playoffs next year. However, if I am the Orlando Magic, I'd be willing to give up Aaron Gordon. I think the Aaron Gordon experiment has kind of run its course in Orlando. They spent some time trying to run him at the 3. He's played the 4. I wouldn't say he's ever been bad when he's in Orlando, but I don't think he's ever been maybe the standout player a lot of people expected him to be. I look at Aaron Gordon and I think great value Blake Griffin, like someone who was crazy athletic. We saw his athletic ability on display at the dunk contest a couple years ago when he went against Zach LaVine. But he's never really shown me a lot more than that. He has a little bit of offensive game. He can shoot a little bit. He has a little handle. Like I said, his game is very similar to Blake Griffin's in my opinion. So he's an unrestricted free agent after the 2022 season. So not this summer, but next summer. Makes about $17 million a year between those 2 seasons. He just returned to play after missing 15 games with an ankle sprain. So teams may be a little wary of that, trying to see how he plays in these maybe next game or 2 that they might see him before the trade deadline. Before the season, he's averaging 13 points on 42% from the field and 36% from 3. Now, the 36% from 3 is solid. The 42% from the field is okay, but I guess I'll say it makes sense in terms of his game. He does shoot a lot of mid-range and out of the post. Like I said, very similar game to Blake Griffin. He's not a great defender, but I definitely would think it would help a team who's looking for offense from a big man who can facilitate. Very similar to the LaMarcus Aldridge situation. Aaron Gordon just might be a little more appealing to some teams because he's a little younger and a lot more athletic. But overall, I think that's all we got for today's episode. Thank you so much. If you made it to this far, the people who make it this far are my favorite people. Appreciate you so much for tuning in and listening. Like I said, you can find us on a bunch of different platforms. The link is always in my bio on my Instagram or in the description of YouTube or the show notes on Apple and Spotify. Thanks so much for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a like, subscribe, Apple Music, 5-star. Appreciate you. And I will catch you all in the next episode. Peace.